There's actually, quite a bit of news over the weekend. In the meantime, there's this real interesting, I talked last week, actually the week before last, about the, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief associated with dying and death, typically, but you can generalize it. And one of those stages is bargaining. And I have gotten so many emails from people I know, actually a surprising number of them in Hollywood, who are saying, go over to change.org or go to this place or that place. Here's a petition. There's a petition to tell the electors of the Electoral College to flip their votes. And in the Arizona azcentral.com, which is the I'm forgetting the name of the newspaper, and it doesn't. They should put it when you print something. They should put it anyhow. The headline: Arizona presidential electors report flood of pleas to reject Donald Trump, and these are the Republican electors. And Robert Graham, for example, is one. He said it is total harassment. He has received about 1,700 emails and letters. He says it started about a week ago. Now, bam, it's hardcore. And then these Arizona electors are getting seriously pissed off and saying, we're definitely going to vote for Trump. You've got laws in various states that actually make it a crime to change your vote. In Michigan, if you try it, cancels your vote and your elector is replaced. Anyhow, there's a lot going on with this. And John Kowal is with us. He is the Vice President for Programs at the Brennan Center for Justice at the New York University School of Law. BrennanCenter.org is the website. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being with us. The Electoral College, arguably, CELDEF, the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, CELDEF.org, has a great blog up today about how the Electoral College was part of the framers of the Constitution's efforts to maintain basically power, wealth, and property rights, along with their insertion of slavery into the Constitution. Can you give us a little background on the Electoral College, and is there any possibility at all? It sure looks to me like this is just wishful thinking, particularly looking at this list of states that have laws against electors flipping their votes, that the Electoral College output. Now, this is 2 presidents now in the last 2 decades that have been elected to the White House by a majority. That would be Al Gore and Hillary Clinton, who never served as president because of the Electoral College. So anyhow, tell us about this.
Yeah, well, it is remarkable that twice now in 16 years we've had this crazy situation. When I was in college and law school, you had to look back to 1888 for the last time that the popular vote was overridden by the vote of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is, you have to understand it as one of the many compromises that the framers struck when they drafted and ratified the Constitution. So it very much was a check. It was concerned by the small states that they would be outvoted by the bigger states. There was a concern about keeping a role for state legislatures. And one of the strange things about the Electoral College is that the Constitution gives state legislatures pretty much free rein on how to allocate the electoral votes. Since the Civil War, that has been basically decided through a popular vote in each state. But there's nothing to stop a state legislature from saying that we'll pick the electors, except, of course, for public opinion. The college also reflected a distrust of popular democracy. So while some framers did want a direct popular vote, there are others that thought that the electors would act as a check. In particular, they were worried about demagogues coming to power, and they wanted the electors to be a brake on that.
Well, John Adams used to talk a lot about the rabble, and once he became president, his wife Abigail became very outspoken about this, which arguably led to the Alien and Sedition Acts, based on Jefferson's letters, anyway.
That's quite right. And then, but but you also really have to view it through the lens of it really was the slave South that insisted on the Electoral College.
Mm-hmm.
They were outnumbered by the North in population. They pumped up their representation in Congress through the infamous 3/5 compromise, where slaves were counted as 3/5 of a person for allocating House representation, even though, of course, slaves would never vote. So the Electoral College, gave an extra, oomph to the representation of the South in the presidential election. So it is a product of its time. It's as relevant today as colonial militias were, but in fact, we're stuck with it until we change it. The system, the way it works is that the Constitution maintains that you need a majority of electoral votes to be president. And the electoral votes are determined by the number of representatives in the House, 435, plus the number of senators, 100. And there was an amendment to give D.C. 3 electoral votes.
Right, and adding the senators in is what gives the small states the extra power, because every small state has 2 senators regardless of their population.
That's quite right. So the states are allocated electoral votes every 10 years following the census. So Pennsylvania, for example, got 18 House districts after the last census, had 2 Senate seats, and that's why they have 20 electoral votes. Right. Over time, some states that grow in population will get more electoral votes. States that decline in population will get less, and that's determined every 10 years. As I said, though, the Constitution authorizes state legislatures to appoint electors whichever way they choose. In 48 states, that's done in a winner-take-all scenario, where basically the candidate who gets the most votes in Arkansas gets all of the electoral votes in Arkansas. 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, allocate them by congressional district. And this year you had the unusual situation where Donald Trump peeled off 1 electoral vote in Maine by winning one of the 2 congressional districts.
Right.
Now, people think that the Electoral College operates as a deliberating force, but in fact, the electors don't meet in one place. They all are going to go in mid-December to their respective state capitals, and there they're going to cast votes. And they're going to cast separate ballots for the president and the vice president. They are expected, but they're not bound in the Constitution to vote for the candidate that they are representing. But as you noted, that in fact it's very rare for anything else to happen. For the most part, these electors are basically drawn from the party faithful. So you have people who are party committee members. Here in New York, I saw that Andrew Cuomo and Bill Clinton are electors. So, they're pretty much reliable votes for the candidate of their party. One thing I should say is that when they created the Electoral College, the founders never really imagined that we would have political parties. That came a little bit after. So they really did think that the electors would decide amongst a bunch of different candidates. But very quickly, the country split into 2 parties, and the Electoral College almost fell apart, and they had to amend the Constitution to fix it in 1803. But basically, at this point, when I vote in New York for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, I expect those electors to follow the will of the people. There is such a thing as a faithless elector, which I can get to in a minute, but those have been kind of rare footnotes in history.
Right. Well, that's what these petitions are all doing, is basically asking electors to become what are referred to as faithless electors. That is to cast their vote, even though they're committed to vote for Donald Trump, to cast their vote for Hillary Clinton on the premise that she got more popular votes and therefore is entitled to the White House. As I said, in the setup to this, I think this is the bargaining stage of the 5 stages of grief. I don't think there's any chance that more than a few electors will do this. In some states, they simply can't. In many states, actually, the list here: Alabama, Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, D.C., Florida, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, goes on all the way up to Wyoming. Have actually state laws against being a faithless elector. In some cases, it's just a fine, but in some cases, you just get replaced and another elector comes in.
Yeah, I mean,
it just seems to me like this ain't going to happen.
I truly don't see it happening, because it would mean convincing people who are, Republican Party officials and Republican Party, apparatus loyalists to go against their party, and that doesn't seem very likely. There was one fellow in Washington State who announced his intention to be a faithless elector.
Right.
He is a supporter of Bernie Sanders, I understand, and he said that he could not really bring himself to vote for Hillary Clinton. That has happened over the years. Someone in 1976 voted for Ronald Reagan instead of Gerald Ford. Usually they don't make a difference. But, in a close election, again, you need 270 electoral votes to be elected president. If it's a tie or you don't have the majority, it goes to the House of Representatives to decide in a very undemocratic system where every state casts one vote. That hasn't happened since 1824. But this person, this elector, threatened, he actually said he would look forward to that scenario. So there actually is, in rare cases, a possibility, and it isn't so far-fetched. Right now, Trump has 290 electoral votes. Clinton has 232, and they have not allocated Michigan. So if Michigan went to Hillary Clinton and somehow she had won Pennsylvania with 20 electoral votes, she would have had 270 electoral votes, and this guy would have been exactly in a position to do what he threatened to do, which is to steal the victory away from her and send the election to the House of Representatives.
Wow. Which definitely would have voted for Trump because there's more red states than there are blue states right now.
That's right.
So, but that's not what happened, regardless of how the Michigan count comes out, because Pennsylvania went for Trump, right?
No, he's way over. But another way of looking at it is that Donald Trump needed 270 votes to win. Hillary needed 271.
I see.
She needed insurance against this guy.
Right, against that one guy. But we are where we are right now, and I've had a lot of people encourage me, hey, jump on this bandwagon of telling people to basically harass the electors. And then I'm reading these news articles where the electors are coming out and saying, I'm being, like people are calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning on my cell phone. They're publicizing my cell phone number and stuff like this, and they're getting seriously upset about it. And it just seems to me like we should be spending our time and effort someplace else doing something else, that this is just a last gasp, and it's going to be futile, and it's going to produce, and it has already produced a backlash. Do you think that my analysis is accurate, or should people try to encourage faithless electors if they believe that that's the way to go?
I like your analogy to the bargaining phase of the grief process, because I do think it's an understandable desire. It makes sense, but until we change the system, the reality is we have a system that does not choose the winner based on the national popular vote.
Right.
Donald Trump did, fair and square win in the electoral vote, and even though he lost the popular vote substantially. And right now, Hillary Clinton has more than 1.7 million votes.
Yeah, she's going to beat 2 million. We have about a half a minute left. NationalPopularVote.com is the group that is working to basically replace, to functionally do away with the Electoral College without amending the Constitution. Do you support that, or do you know about that?
Yes, I do support it. I think people should, channel their energy into actually reforming our creaking systems of democracy that can use reform. One good place to start, and that includes redistricting, that includes, money in politics, but one place to start is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It's very difficult to amend the Constitution, which is seemingly what you would need to do to get rid of the Electoral College. But the compact provides a way for states to agree that they will cast their vote for the winner of the national popular vote. Because, again, I said the legislatures can decide any way that they want to allocate the electoral vote.
Yeah.
So right now, 11 states equaling 165 electoral votes have agreed to do this. So if you can get a bunch of other states and get over 270, let's say it was 50.
John, we're out of time, but
okay.
The National Popular Vote, hang on just a second, nationalpopularvote.com is the site.
This
hang on.
is the Thom Hartmann Program.
John Kowal, VP of Programs at the Brennan Center for Justice at the NYU School of Law, brennancenter.org. John, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.